Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today, have we got a treat for you? Linda Pevac is back. She's back for her third conversation, right? Third conversation.
Hey, Simon.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll pretend that we haven't just been chatting for 10 minutes before we
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So, healing. What does healing mean to you, Linda?
Wow, that's a wide open question. Healing means growth to me. And in order to have growth, you have to have the spaciousness in order to have the room to have that growth. And I think the hard part comes for us is the how-to of how do you put that into practice to cultivate that growth. And through growth, we have healing. And my healing, as all of us, we're just going to be healing if we choose to until we no longer walk on this earth.
Yeah. So where's the spaciousness? What do you mean by the spaciousness you think?
Well, you could think of that symbolically in a lot of different ways. If I needed to put more clothes in my closet, I'd have to go through the ones I have and eliminate to make space for the new ones. Now I have a choice of whether I want to let go of the old stuff or if I want to hang on to it. And if I want to hold on to it, then I'm not going to have any space for new clothes.
Yeah.
So if you think of it in that way, it's pretty simple. You want to plant flowers, you need to provide the fertile ground and the proper elements for those to thrive and grow. So to me, it's a daily practice to create growth. And if I don't do that, Simon, then I find myself not as often as I used to, because I can catch myself so much earlier now. If I have that back sliding thought of, oh, it's too hard to have growth, it's too hard to make change, then I find my life gets in chaos and I pay the price. So I've learned to listen. I've learned the wisdom of listening and doing the practice every day of how to maintain areas of where I always want to have new growth opportunities. And that's what I'm dedicated to. It's my new chapter in my life. It's what I write about. It's what my third book is going to be about, is how things grow.
So take me back to the wardrobe analogy, right? So I kind of get the metaphor. We need to get rid of some old clutter. And I've done this with books, actually. I think I've done it with books more than I've done it with old wardrobes as a conscious kind of thing. Like the bookshelf is full. I've gone through and I've taken them all to the charity shop.
Yeah.
But I have done it with clothes as well. And I want to tell you a silly story about the clothes that's just popped into my head, right? So I went into this secondhand charity shop, right, near us, thrift shops, I think they call them in the States. We call it a charity shop here in the UK. I went in and I went in maybe thinking that they might have some books, like a novel to read on the beach, right? But I saw this shirt and I thought, I really like that shirt. And it was £5, so whatever that is, £6, $6, $7, something like that. Anyway, so I bought this shirt, and then I realized on the drive home that I had actually given them the shirt. I'd got the shirt from somebody for my birthday, not liked it in that moment, taken it to the charity shop, and then I had paid to buy my own shirt back.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I laughed at that point. This was the big thing for me, is that I laughed at what had happened rather than beating myself up, which I think would have been the whole thing. I kind of laughed at the stupidity of it. And here I am sharing the stupidity with it. Okay, so that's Simon and his old shirt. But what do you mean by letting go of our old stuff?
Well, that could mean a lot of different things of, sometimes we have to forgive in order to create more space in our hearts. Maybe that's ourselves, maybe that other people or things that have happened to us, because we hang on to all those things that no longer serve us. There's no space to have new growth. So the hard part, I think, is that you have to get very willing to look and be reflective in order to see what is clutter. What are the things that I'm so addicted to without even knowing it, maybe their thoughts. Remember, we've always talked about being addicted to our own way of thinking. That by far will keep us in the same place forever. Well, we've always done that way. We've always, it always worked in the past, or let's get back to the good old days. That prevents us, locks us down into not creating more space. And at that point, you have to figure you've made a choice, whether it's consciously or unconscious, to make change, because change is freaking hard. And a lot of people don't want to change. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, it's awkward. But it's just, the way of life of you've got a death and you have a rebirth. You see it in nature, you see it in all kinds of things. It's the pattern. And it's so simple, about taking those clothes out of your closet to create more space for new clothes. But it's in the, practice of it that I think a lot of us get tripped up. It's hard. If not, more people would do it.
More people would do it, yeah. Yeah, addicted to thoughts. So that was the thing that really came through on our from the first time we talked after the release of your first book. And that was the addicted to thought. That was one of the things that really struck me listening to the book on audio, and that's why I asked you about it. So as always, we've got links in the show notes, listeners, if you want to listen to that first interview that I had with Linda when you were still going as Emma Stevens, right? So we've got two names, one person. What struck me is when you were describing the stuff that we're letting go of. I kind of thought that you might be talking about thoughts, but you might be talking about beliefs as well. Is that both?
Yeah, it's just the rigidity of thinking towards anything in your life. If you're so rigid, it doesn't leave any space for resilience, creativity, or growth.
Yeah. So rigidity, you were talking about a construction project before we hit record. So I was thinking about, there's this word that's bandied out around a lot. This word of mindset, right? Mindset. And I think, well, wouldn't it better if I don't want to be set in my ways, right? You use the word rigid in our thoughts, set in our ways, set in our mindset. I was thinking, so I came up with this idea, I don't know, last year or something, about being mind fluid. Mind fluid rather than mindset. In the hope that we might be, in the hope that I might be more open to new suggestions, really open to a new way of thinking, and less rigid in my mind. So yeah, I was thinking of concrete. Yeah, when you're pouring concrete for a construction project and it sets, it becomes rigid. Like sometimes you've got concrete and then you've got reinforced concrete. Do you use these terms in the US? Reinforced concrete? Maybe you call it something else. So concrete is the stuff that sand and cement and that they mix together and forms your foundations of your house, right? And then what would you call that concrete in the US? You have got a different word for it?
No, it's
concrete, yeah. But then the reinforced concrete is when they're building a wall out of it and they put steel through it. Put steel work and the steel work is the steel work is encased in the encased in the concrete, and that is when we can become really rigid and set in our ways. So we've kind of, are you talking here about seeing our own beliefs? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, first of all, you have to be willing to look at your own beliefs and be willing to accept what kind of change has to happen in order to change a belief. And that could mean, deconstruction, dismantling everything you've ever thought, you've ever known about anything. And a lot of people don't want to go there. A lot of people use substances to cover that very thing up. So, it's the willingness. You have to remain willing and open to look at these things and examine. A life unexamined, right? What we know about that is you've got to look at it.
Yeah. So what do any particular moments come to mind? Because the stuff that when the most belief changing moments of my life have been when I haven't been kind of intentional. I haven't gone out to try and change the belief. It's when the belief has changed. Do you get the difference?
I do.
So do any particular belief busting moments come to life? Any particular healing moments?
Well, for me, and I think we've talked about this before too, my consciousness, where I had radical acceptance, resilience, and awareness all happened at the same time. And it was about over 7 years ago now, where I had to come into a lot of different realizations, almost on top of each other. It was almost overwhelming, but I am so much better off for having done so. And it took a catalyst, maybe several catalysts to get me there. But they did happen, and I did listen.
Yeah.
In order to make that change, I was willing to be committed to make the changes necessary so I could break my own addicted way of thinking.
Yeah. So this is breaking down to breakthrough, is it?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I think I've heard that phrase recently, maybe Michelle Madrid somewhere. It really struck a note with me.
It's like the belief is changed despite of us. It's like it comes to us. We don't make the insight happen. We have to be willing. We have to hang out at the bus stop. We have to hang out for the bus stop for the bus to arrive. We can't determine when the bus is going to go arrive, but unless we hang out at the bus stop, we ain't going to ever get on it.
Exactly. I mean, you can have, unless you have that core willingness. And if you have that, then yes, things can come peripherally. They come for me all the time now, where if I get still and quiet, then if I go too fast, then I'm sort of, backsliding a little bit.
Yeah.
But if I slow down, then I do see these things come at me peripherally, and I didn't will them into being. It's just I was willing to see it and actively maybe like, okay, what am I not seeing right now? Can I take a look around?
Yeah.
Do that continuously on a daily basis.
So I don't know whether I've asked you this question, because I've asked other people that question, and I've asked myself the question. I don't know whether I've got an answer or not. What we're talking about here is beliefs. We don't hear much about beliefs in the adoptee world.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think that might be?
Well, I'm not certain I would agree with that.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, because my core belief is that I was not enough, not good enough. And so until I went back in and had a chat with myself of, is that a true story? I had to deal with that belief, implicit belief, right? It was an unconscious belief, but it was still in my body. So I think you have to name it before you can change it. So I deal with beliefs a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. You think so? You think you think that we see a lot of talk about beliefs in adoptee circles?
Yeah, I think I hear more beliefs than I hear anything about growth, because
okay.
Maybe there's a stuckness of, here's my belief, I'm going to stay with that, and then I must stop. Like hard stop right there at the belief. Instead of, okay, then what? Where do we take that? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to become? And we all have choice to do that. until I gave my own self permission to know that I could change a belief and question the validity of the belief in the first place, then I was always going to be stuck way back there and just, I have this belief.
Yeah. So are we stuck in the belief that we're stuck? Is that a
I think
belief?
some are. I know I was. And I would guess that others are, other adoptees are.
Yeah, I was. I was. I wasn't stuck with that belief. I don't know if I was with the belief. Well, I thought I was stuck with the primal wound. When I read, I didn't believe I was stuck until I read the primal wound.
Mm-hmm.
So the primal wound, at first, it was kind of there was a relief in a diagnosis.
Yes, it
But
was. It
then,
has a name.
yeah, it has a name, right? It
Mhm.
has a name. And then it became, but then that relief was kind of short-lived, because then I believed I was stuck with it, because I couldn't be unadopted. I couldn't go back and change.
Right.
I couldn't change the way. I couldn't change the primal wound. It was
Right.
something I was going to have to live with. Something I was stuck with. Was kind of where I was at for a while.
Yeah.
Until I think somebody told me, no, you don't have to be, stuck.
You can make the choice for yourself. And not that we won't always be affected by it in some way, because it did happen. And it really is a real scientific neurological thing of being severed from your mother. But I like to say that I changed it into, it's a wound, but it has become my superpower, because it's helped me get to know myself so much better. And uh, it's evolving.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to remain a negative, limiting, suffocating thing.
yeah, yeah. I was talking to a fellow adoptee just before we spoke, and he was saying a very challenging. I think it was a challenge. It challenged me. I think it challenged some of the listeners. Maybe not all of them. Maybe not you. That it we're lucky. We've got a place to start.
Mm.
We've got a place to start. We've got a really obvious pinpoint. And like most people don't know, because he was talking about other people he'd met from all different, a lot of non-adoptees as well, and he's saying, well, they don't know they haven't got a place to start
Mhm.
their exploration from. They're trying to, whereas we have. And I said, have you got any idea how ironic that is? Because most of us don't spot it. I was talking to, before I spoke to him, I was talking to another fellow adoptee coming on the podcast in March, and she was saying she did 40 years of therapy before she seriously, or anybody before a therapist seriously considered adoption as the root of her problems.
That's just incredible.
40 years.
Yeah.
But like, we're judging, I think we're judging we're judging 20th century therapists on 21st century knowledge, right? This stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could say, well, Nancy Berry she published the book, 1993. So we are judging the therapists of the 80s with the knowledge that wasn't there till the 90s. But those therapists should have been dialed into it, shouldn't they? If that stuff was coming up. I don't know.
Well, it was being talked about and it had its birth at that time. But I think these ideas, as you said, even for adoptees, we're often reluctant to listen to it, believe it, and research it. But think of how much better off, because of the work that our pioneers have done, what we're doing, and the ones of the future are going to have this knowledge. And maybe we'll have so many more adoptee competent therapists that hopefully that's what our work is all about, is trying to help this get more awareness and have this radical acceptance of what this means and how it can have its hands on a life that is kind of thwarted, really, and not able to thrive in the way it should,
Yeah,
because people don't know how to treat and raise and be kind to an adoptee.
yeah. So what you've talked a lot about willingness and openness. You've mentioned the opposite of that, like a reluctance.
Mhm.
When we were closed, we talk about our mindset. What do you think hinders our healing other than that stuff?
Other than that stuff. Well, inability to forgive. Um, Not practicing and nurturing our innate resilience within ourselves. I think you can cultivate that. Not that I don't think everyone is just automatically born with resilience. Some of us maybe, but I think it's something you have to uh, nurture so it can grow. Because
We
if you
don't.
don't have that, then you're rigid.
Can I go back to the forgiveness thing? Because we don't. What? How much forgiveness do you think we see in adoptee circles?
Forgiveness is such a sensitive word, and it's so complex because it can mean a lot of different things. It's not really about, well, I forgive you for the awful thing you did to me.
Yeah,
It's more of us. The letting go process is so freaking hard for people, because for me, I'll forgive maybe myself or a situation, and I find myself picking it up 5 minutes later. And I'm like, no, no, I set that down. I let that go. And the more I don't do that, the more stuck I get. And then the more stuck I get, the less growth I have. So the more I can open up, be spacious, let go, um, and try to attach more with the healthy things that help me thrive, and have the knowingness that that's what that is, that letting go process, the better off I am.
so you're talking mainly about forgiving ourselves, like grace for ourselves, yeah?
Not entirely, but
Uh,
I'm just saying across the board of the things we hold in our heart and in our bodies that we need to learn how to let go, especially if it doesn't serve you anymore. Because some people will keep doing something until they realize, oh, this is killing me. Maybe I should let it go.
yeah. Well,
But
that's back to the breaking down, back to the breaking
Mhm.
down to break
It's
through.
like you have to have this epiphany of, oh, I'm literally trying to kill myself.
Yeah. So yeah, we that's the epiphanies are the belief shifts when the beliefs are shifted, right?
Yeah.
The way
Yeah,
that,
you have a choice of to listen to that or resist it and say, that's bogus. I'm still going to go this direction. I'm going to ignore that fork in the road where I think I have a choice. I'm just going to do it the way we always did it.
yeah. Can
And that
you
could be generational.
yeah.
Uh,
Can you
your grandmother did it, you're on and on.
give us an example from your own stuff on that?
It just made me think of a funny story that my parents would always get very irritated with the new things that come up of, I don't know, you have to wear your seatbelts now, or you shouldn't eat too much canned food, or you shouldn't smoke in the car with a child or any person, right? With the windows rolled up. And their whole attitude was, well, we went through it and we didn't die. Look how great we are. And it was just like hung in the air of, yeah, look how great you guys are.
Yeah. Yeah,
But that was the clinging to, it's the way my parents did it, it's the way their parents did it. We're just going to continue to do it that way instead of stop, full stop, full stop. We're going to do stuff differently now. We're going to think differently.
yeah. It's a resistance to change, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, we're so resistant. But it feels so good when you actually do change and you reap the benefits. I don't know why we don't, that momentum doesn't grow on us of, well, remember last time I didn't want to change, but I did. And now look how much better off I am.
Yeah,
It's that applied knowledge. I'm not sure why in myself, I don't know why it takes me so much sometimes to just get off the dime and do it.
yeah. What about um, forgiveness to adoptive parents that have wronged us? What
Mhm.
about that?
Well, I think you have to ask yourself, first of all, what good is it doing at this point? Are you trying to change something, or are you just hanging on to that? And who is it really hurting? Probably just, preventing your own self from growing. I think there's an acceptance and an acknowledgement of being ill-treated. And then there's, okay, I've identified that, but I'm also going to let go from that because I don't want that to rule my life.
Yeah,
And so
I,
that's where I had the change to go a different direction.
yeah. I think that's the thing that I worry about myself, or that I see a lot of. Like there's it's only, somebody once said, resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes. And you're poisoning yourself.
We're poisoning we're poisoning ourselves by hanging onto our anger.
Yes. A lot of truth to that.
And whenever I get anywhere near this subject, I think about that. We talked about this before. That Wayne, have you heard about a guy called Wayne Dyer? Come across him?
Oh, I know who he is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Did you hear the story about him going to his? His father, he wasn't adopted, but his father, I think he was the eldest of 6 kids or something like that, and the father abandoned them, and this was in the 50s, or I don't know, a long time ago. And Wayne Dyer was very angry about this and held on to that anger until he went to the grave. He went to his father's grave many years after the father had left the family home and left the mum to raise these kids on her own. And he went to the grave to pee on the grave,
Mm.
and then he ranted at his father's uh, graveside for 2 hours until he had a spontaneous forgiveness.
Mm.
He had a spontaneous forgiveness. It came to him. He was kind of like, there was, I guess, after shouting at his dad, um, there was nowhere else for him to go, and then something else. He had that epiphany moment where he forgave his dad. Something within him, and
Yeah.
he says that. So this guy was a like early self-help guru, wasn't he? He was a big deal. He was a
Mm-hmm.
big deal in there, not in adoptee circles, but in self-help circles generally. And he says he credits that letting go of that anger towards his father as a pivotal moment
Yeah.
in his life, when he took the angry jumper out of his closet, I guess.
Yeah. It's like he just broke through the dam and allowed the water to flow freely. He was not going to be free until he came to that moment of acceptance.
Yeah, but that acceptance came to him,
Mm-hmm.
and was he willing to do that? I guess he opened himself up. He,
Yeah, he
he
did.
followed the path, So I can think of some stuff with me with birth family that staying with the path, following the path, rather than, so when I went, after I paused my search, I restarted my search process, and that led to big realizations coming to me. And it wasn't like I willed them into existence, but I carried along the journey. If I'd paused and stopped, then then the realizations wouldn't have come to me.
Yeah.
So
But you
I would have stayed stuck.
You have accepted to be on the path. And since you've made that acceptance to do that, things are just going to come by you, and you have a choice of, am I going to look at that? Am I going to think about that? Meditate on it? Yeah.
I'm just thinking there's been some stuckness where I've stayed stuck for
a
couple of years, 6 months, 8 months, and then we're back to grace, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
And the grace that we give ourselves, like earlier in the conversation where you said about the shirt that you repurchased. Yeah. And instead of berating yourself, you treated yourself with loving kindness.
Yeah. I could laugh at myself.
Mm-hmm. Like, isn't that ironic?
And I shared. I
really like that shirt.
Yeah, I shared it. Right, there were people. There was some criticism came on the back of that. I think it's sometimes easier to see this stuff with the trivial stuff. Do you see what I mean? It's easy for me to talk about a shirt that I gave to a thrift shop and then bought back. It's easier to talk about this stuff with.
Well, and the meanings can be translated in a number of different ways. And I think that's why it is easier to talk about a too full closet in order to make space for new clothes. Everyone can understand that, right? You can't put more clothes in unless you take some out. And so then it transcends into other realizations.
Yeah. And the other thing that you talk about with the closet being too full, it's like when our minds are going 10 to the dozen, when the thoughts are never ending, we don't have space for new ones, which is why I think we get realizations in nature, like when we're away from our phones and computers and stuff like that.
An interesting thing happened on my recent trip, that on the last day of the vacation, the rest of it, we had a great time. We were busy, but the last day we had to check out of the hotel at 11. Our flight wasn't until 10 o'clock that night. So my daughter and I were kind of freaking out of, what are we going to do? We're going to be homeless. So we had all these fears consuming our brains and our minds. And then when we finally just slowed down and found this lovely spot where we had covering, where the sun didn't beat down on us all day, we had one of the best days the whole trip, because we were slowing down. We were seeing sea turtles and whales and, their spouts going up in the ocean. And I thought, how ironic that it took the hotel saying, you have to be out of your room. You can't have a late checkout. It made us slow down to that point of being, contemplation can happen at that point. And so things were filling my brain that I didn't have space for before, maybe. I just thought that was kind of a
It's a neat analogy. So yeah, the analogies and the stories are big, because otherwise we haven't got the words for the healing stuff, right? We can't put words to it. So it's almost like the metaphors are like the invisible man is a metaphor for metaphors, right?
Yeah.
We can't
Yeah.
see the invisible man till we put his clothes on, and we can't see our feelings until we put metaphors to them. Letting go of old stuff. Letting go of old stuff. Seeing when we've got too much on our mind.
Well, if your mind is too crowded, there's no space for a new thought. There's less chance of you having an epiphany.
Yeah.
Because there's space for it.
Yeah, yeah.
You've crowded it all out.
You crowded it all out. So for you as a writer, to what extent does that process help you get it all out and heal?
I think it's huge in the way I creatively try to think of my story of what do I want to say? Where do I want to go with this? And I leave my brain I trust is what I do. I trust my brain and my body. It's going to tell me if I ask it, it responds. What do you want to say? And then I'm quiet and I leave space for it to come to me. And that's why I do like to take these vacations, because often I do have these thoughts that come in, and, maybe they work and sometimes they don't, but at least I'm exploring, I'm researching, and I'm absorbing my life, because I'm not writing a book just to write the book and get finished and get it published. I'm healing as I write these books. They're quite intimate for me. And so I think that's the way I write too, is I have to have room in my head and heart space for me to receive and acknowledge and understand what these things are and explore them.
Yeah. And do you have help along the way along that writing process? Do you write with fellow adoptees? Do you have a coach? What does your process look like?
Yes and no. I do have a creative writing coach. Can I drop her name?
Of course, yeah.
Anne Heffron.
Sorry? All right, yeah.
Anne Heffron. She thinks outside of the box. We don't go line by line or anything like that. We just chat when I talk with her. And sometimes I get so rigid in my thinking that something has to just be one way. And she's notorious for saying, well, now, Linda, what if you thought of it this way? And I'm just like, she gives me permission to think outside the box. So that's really helpful. And then I'm part of an adoptee voices group with Sarah Easterly. It's called On the Page, and it's for published authors, where we get together and just talk about, how are you marketing this? Have you done Audible for your book? Who's a good editor? And so it's that sharing of information. I'm often just a sponge, Simon. I have all these notepads and sticky notes, and I'm forever just writing things down of, oh, research that, research this. I find a lot of joy in that expansion. So it's a fun process.
So what is it that's expanding? What is it that's growing?
My heart and my mind and my body, everything is just on a thriving mode, moving forward. And that takes radical acceptance, radical resilience, and just the willingness that I have decided for myself, that's where I'm headed. And I was never allowed that before, earlier in life, but now I've have permission to do so.
Yeah. So there's a freedom here.
Liberation.
Yeah.
And that makes me, you can't see me.
Yeah. So what's the new book about?
Well, the title is The Way Things Grow. So it's very appropriate to what we've been talking about the whole hour. Because there are certain elements of how things are going to grow, and there's certain things that will stamp out, oppress, collapse, distinguish growth. And I've been analyzing this to be able to see what that means for me in my life. So I'm going to revisit The Gathering Place, is what the book is about. And I'll fill it with backstory of flashbacks of how I became what I was, how I've evolved, and then how I meet my parts at the gathering place to find healing, because I'm committed to that. And the gathering place is a magical, mythical place that's a portal to visualize and manifest those things to happen, and talk to your parts. We all have parts.
Yeah.
Protective parts. Our true self is actually not a part, it's just the core of who we are, but all of them and how we integrate in order to move from here to where we want to go next.
So you're growing the gathering place, but you're going to write the third book before you revisit the gathering place, or?
No, it's in the format of the third book, of where I'm going to meet new parts of myself. And then I'm also probably going to have some visitors from the first book. I'll check in on them and see how they're doing, and they'll tell me how they're doing. And I've had so many people that responded to the gathering place say, you know what I got from your book is I can create my own gathering place and create my own healing. And I just thought that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. What a gift that was given to me and given to other people, that they could have that for themselves.
So
not just mine.
So in case you don't know, listeners, let me just check I'm right first, actually, before I answer the question. So is this the different parts? Is that the internal family system parts work therapy model? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
people can check this out. So it was founded by a guy called Richard Schwartz. He goes as Dick Schwartz, and he was the kind of founder of IFS, internal family systems. So can you explain what that is? Because internal family systems doesn't sound like it's about us, does it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe not entirely. In fact, I didn't know too much about IFS when I wrote The Gathering Place, but since then, I've seen that, and I've talked to therapists that are IFS certified, and it all unfolded right from that thought of, we have these younger parts of ourselves. And if we talk from adopteeness, we definitely have younger parts that got damaged way early on. And not that we can change what happened, but we now have the ability to go through our mind's eye and go back and sit with that part and say, I'm here, I'm listening to you. How can I help?
Yeah.
And I haven't abandoned you. And so those parts come up in us all the time.
So the parts are what makes up the internal family system. The internal family system is looking at the internal family within us, looking at the different parts of us at our different ages. And then there's this, what Dick Schwartz calls the uppercase S self.
The S self.
Which is so this is the one, listeners, you might have heard this, regular listeners. I don't know if you heard this, we're talking about this, Linda. I came up with a metaphor for that, right? So have you ever played Trivial Pursuits?
Yes.
Yes. So Trivial Pursuits, each player has the cheese holder that they move around the board. Yeah. So the cheese holder, that is our uppercase S self. And the cheeses, the individual cheeses, that's the individual parts of ourself. That's 10-year-old Linda, 15-year-old Linda, 17-year-old Simon, whatever that is. That's the Simon that was rejected from the rugby team, and it triggered that abandonment. I didn't make the team. I've been in the team for 4 years. I didn't make the team 1 year, and I took despite it triggered some abandonment stuff. 13, it triggered not good enough, and I turned away, because obviously when you're a 13-year-old boy, you don't cry in front of you, in front of anybody, especially not fellow other 13-year-old boys, because they're gonna rip you to shreds for that sign of weakness, right? So that 13-year-old rugby player, that is one of my parts. Listeners, just so you know. So the fact that the gathering place is where Linda brought all the different parts, and it's really interesting that you found out about IFS after you'd done that, because I thought your gathering place was your metaphor for IFS.
I knew about IFS, but I hadn't researched it to the extent that I did after the fact.
So it was some kind of intuitive wisdom.
Because I've been in therapy for a long time, and it was really learning about EMDR, and I probably got bits and pieces of the parts work through that. And so I knew enough about it to where I did write that story in a meaningful way that is congruent with IFS therapy. Yeah. But it's so true. It's so healing. And I'm not just about all one modality of, it must be IFS, it must be EMDR. Because guess what? That would be rigid. And we don't want to be rigid.
Yeah.
We want to be open to what speaks to you. And it really spoke to me of, I can't change what happened, but I can go and bring healing and update them with 2024 data. That's the important thing, is to update the system knowledge base, where what that younger part doesn't know is going to happen. Now, capital S self can go back and say, bring healing with that new knowledge. And so that's integration.
So you're healing yourself?
Well, yes, but I am getting help from all different sources. I'm taking healing wherever I find it.
Yeah. So you are exploring the different modalities, but essentially you're talking about whatever it is that helps you learn or grow. And in the final analysis, it's all coming to the uppercase self and then being shared with the parts. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all learning back and forth from each other, because I'm finding out, what did you need at that time? When maybe you wanted your parent to just ask you, how's your day going? Instead of berating you for not cleaning the garage well enough. Now, what did that part need at that time? And so I bring healing to that younger part and say, I hear you, I see you. And then the younger part shares with me, this is what I needed. So it's a reciprocity process.
Yeah. What are the most significant beliefs, do you think, that you've seen busted?
That makes me think of something I just heard on a podcast. Again, I think it was Michelle Madrid, where she said, on the day her mother relinquished her was the day that she relinquished the right to love herself. Because in that raw state, we're not even two people yet. We are symbiotic with our moms, but we're severed. And in her implicit mind understanding, she was unlovable because she had been relinquished. So it took her to go back and visit the validity of that belief. And until she did that, to change that, to know that, it's a better thing to believe that you can love yourself. If you can't love yourself, then you really are down a deep, dark hole. And for me, until I realized that life wants life, and I get that from Gabor Mate, life wants life. And I'm thinking, damn straight, it didn't matter what my adoptive parents did or my biologicals did. The universe, the holy mystery, wanted me here. I'm here. That's the proof. It's the reason you're here. It's proof that you were wanted. So you see, that's where I could blow apart that belief that I was not enough, not worthy, shouldn't be here. I'm a burden. I blew it all apart.
One of the beliefs that I see is, and I it's not anything that I've ever believed myself, but I've see, you'd be talking about different people like Gabor Mate, for example. Now, I think there's a belief, I have definitely seen this belief that we can only heal from listening to adoptees. Right? It has to be all adoptee centric. And I think that puts people like Gabor Mate kind of off limits.
I disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah, because he has his own story. I don't know if you heard of how his mother was pregnant with him during World War II, and she was in deep trouble of being deported at the time of being pregnant. And so she had to hand him to strangers or family or something. He was without his mom for a while, and it affected him deeply, the severance.
I never heard that. I never heard that.
He talks about it quite often. And so also, if you've never heard him with Zara Phillips, they have an amazing, you can YouTube that, of where he talks specifically about adoptee issues. Not that he is an adoptee.
I haven't dug deep enough. I haven't dug
I'll give it to you later. It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, listeners. I'm totally factually incorrect there. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
okay.
I'm going to dig that out. I'm going to have to dig that out. So conscious of time, is there anything that I've not asked you about that you'd like to share?
Again, I feel like we really covered a lot of territory, and I got to express what has actually been on my heart because I'm writing about it right now. So thank you.
Yeah.
It helped me get more clarity.
Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, listeners, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.